So we've been absolutely delighted to get a good day's rain. We've had nearly an inch of rain Monday and Tuesday, which is a brilliant benefit to the crops. Really was needed, so we're very grateful to get that. It's still very cold and windy though. I'm right here first thing Wednesday morning, and we're going to try and put some herbicide onto the potato field. We've been waiting for the opportunity to get in and do this. It's been too cold, too windy and too dry. Soil needs to be damp and nice and calm, still weather, so that when we go to apply the herbicide, it gets down into the alleys of the drill, and if any wee bit of drift, it'll blow and miss one side, and then you'll end up with the weeds. As you can see from the photo of the early potatoes that are hit with the frost, the weeds can be a real pain, especially in something like this where we're churning the ground nice and fine and disturbing the soil. So we're going to go and try and get these sealed off now, and that'll hopefully keep the weeds at bay. Absolutely perfect conditions for doing it. I would prefer to do it at night, but we're having to do it first thing in the morning here because it's the only opportunity we've had with no wind. So we're going to get on and get it done. Before we start, I just want to come across here actually and show you an ongoing issue we have. And if it was us as farmers leaking sewage into the environment, we'd be told to get it sorted yesterday, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month. But this is the soak away from the septic tank, or the sewage treatment works for the Ballyno houses. This is a housing executive problem which they've known about now for weeks. And their initial response was, we'll worry about it when you've dug the potatoes in October. Now I can't see how that's acceptable to allow this. It's not even clean sewage. It should be completely clean, more or less drinkable water comes out of their treatment works. But that isn't by no means the case. This has been running for months, but we could really only prove it when the ground started to dry out. We lost the crop along the bottom of this field in the autumn time because it was wet. And now in the spring, because it started to dry out, we can really tell that it definitely was that's the issue. You can see the complete area that this is running into. Saturated, contaminated ground, and it's just a complete mess. There. That's just a squelchy mess. And the stench from it. And I just stepped in the wrong place. Now, going by the current state of it, I'd really love to know when the last time that the discharge from that was ever tested, because there's been zero maintenance carried out, that is for sure. Just closing up the sprayer here now with this field done. But another issue with the seepage is we couldn't plant the headland of that field. So we've lost that part of the field to cropping, which isn't really a very efficient use of land. But I don't know, maybe they'll fix it sometime. To get back out of the potato field, we're just coming up through the field that our spring barley drilling trial is in. That's where we have 12 different plots, all sowed with different mechanisms, different ways of working the soil. And after the rain, it's just looking an absolute picture. It's great that we actually got that rain just to help it along. And Clunky there, he's still having a wee sleep. Anybody that has kids that watches Fergie on YouTube will know who Clunky is. The joys of farming and owning machinery. Get up early, get the spraying done when there's no wind. I'm into the second field, and I went to turn at the headland here and the steering stopped. So it turns out we have a burst hydraulic hose that controls the steering, so spraying's going nowhere till we get that fixed. Just have to find the correct pipe, take it off, go and get it repaired and back again. Typical. On the day you really need to get on, when the conditions are perfect, you're stuck with a mechanical. You can see the oil's dripping there. We just have to work out which pipe it's coming from. Get it off and get it repaired and back on again. So this long steering pipe has been rubbing, if we can focus, up against another one, and it has just buffed a hole through it. That's just 10 years of vibration and wear, and then it blows the oil out there. So take us over to the hydraulic repair shop, get a new hose made and get it fitted and get back into action. New pipe ready for fitting. Let's get it all. An hour and a half later, fingers crossed we're good to go. I'm sure some of you are saying, well, why do you use chemicals? You shouldn't be using chemicals on the crops. And I very much would rather I didn't have to use any chemicals either. But potatoes and vegetables in particular, especially when you create such a fine seed bed, you're providing the ideal opportunity for the weeds to germinate and grow. And also the fact that potatoes is a crop that takes several weeks to emerge. Generally a main crop could be up to a month, depending on the weather, before the crop emerges out of the soil. And then it takes time, really another further month, before it builds a big enough canopy that would start to choke out the weeds. So at that stage the weeds would have taken over and choked out the potatoes, and therefore we end up with no crop. And at the end of the day, if we're going to put the effort and the expense and the fuel and everything else associated with growing a crop, you're going to want to try and grow the best crop you can to make sure the level of efficiency is as high as possible. Otherwise you run the risk of increasing your carbon footprint, because you've spent a lot of time and effort and money growing half a crop. The other issue comes in, we could manually weed these crops with mechanical weeders, which is the way a lot of the vegetable production is going now. A lot of vegetables no longer have any herbicides available. That will work. And it means as farmers we're having to resort to doing it manually. But the consequences is that every time we go through the field with a weeder to knock out the weeds, we're disturbing the soil, we're releasing more carbon into the atmosphere, and we're burning more fuel to do that. And for anybody to think you can get somebody to do it manually by hand, yeah, you must be kidding. So that your alternative to not using chemicals is to burn fuel and release carbon in the soil. So that's another one of the aspects of, you know, reaching net zero. It's not that straightforward, it's not that simple, there is compromise. If you want to reach net zero and reduce the fuel usage in farms, reduce the carbon release, are you going to have to use more chemicals? Or if you're going to reduce the amount of chemicals available to the farmer or industry or anything, are you going to then increase their carbon footprint? And it's very difficult to find the balance between both that will work. And that's why it's very difficult to have one solution that's going to fit all, and to just say we can reduce chemicals or reduce our carbon footprint and everything will hunky-dory is never going to be that straightforward. And I'll explain that in a different video related more solely to carbon. If we get the correct conditions when we're applying this herbicide before the potatoes come up, so we're not contacting any of the potatoes, it means that we should be able to do it once and once only, and that will protect us from the weeds. You know, alternative methods or anything means several passes or several combinations. That's why it's so important this morning to try and get it on when the weather's correct, and it works best when the soil is damp. So we need damp soil, we need little wind, and we don't want it too sunny and bright, because if it's too sunny and too warm, spray will dry out and evaporate too quick, and we won't get the benefit of it working on the soil to prevent the weeds from germinating. You know, the efficiency wise, I could spray all the land that we have in potatoes in 3 or 4 hours if you don't have any breakdowns. If I was to weed them all manually with a weeder on the tractor, that would probably take at least a week. So the fuel that we would burn over that week compared to what we use in the couple of hours in the sprayer would be a colossal difference. So our fuel usage would rise, the carbon release of the soil movement would rise, and we'll increase our carbon footprint. So when the Greens and the environmentalists tell you they want you to reduce your carbon footprint, they want you to reduce the amount of chemicals you use, they want to reduce the amount of food you produce, who's going to produce the food? Where is it going to be produced? And how are we supposed to live? Surely it's our own responsibility to produce our food in our area, locally sustainable, no air miles, no boat miles, grown to the highest standards in the world. Produce it somewhere halfway around the world with no standards in terms of food quality, environmental impact, carbon release. They don't care, they just want to produce food. That's why they're cutting down the amnesty. A wee bit slower working in these small fields, but then one benefit of that is that we have lots of hedges and lots of trees, as you can see in the background. We've now come back up into the spring barley plots, and we're going to do a few assessments to measure the moisture and temperature of each plot, because we want to see throughout the growing season variations in temperature and moisture, and how the weather and how the plots react to give us the best outcome. Be it in wet weather, we need good drainage, and be in dry weather, we need moisture holding capacity. And I suppose the Holy Grail is the one that allows both to the best ability, so that the ground is more workable and more manageable throughout the season. So as you can see here, we have a moisture probe in 4 inches deep, and we have a reading of 26.2% moisture in the soil. The temperature of this plot is 11.2. We're back out in the field of early potatoes, and we're now putting the fleece all back on. They've got enough water, we've got the weeds sprayed. The potatoes are practically dead as a result of the previous frost. We're now forecast -3, -4 tonight. So we're putting the fleece back on in the hope that it'll maybe help protect what's left a wee bit. Otherwise we're going to end up with no early potatoes. That's no good for you, the customer, who's currently coming into the shop saying, when's my early potatoes coming? Jersey Royals are out, the Cyprus are out. We're in a different country. Temperatures have been low, growing season has been very poor and delayed, and the availability of early new season local potatoes is going to be very, very low. It's definitely going to be a late season regardless now on how it builds up. Some farmers may have sheltered okay and get a bit of early market potatoes. The problem is their next batch, which are planted and sitting slowly moving, you know, they should be up and away now too, but they're very much delayed because the soil's too cold, and while the soil's cold, the crops won't grow. So fingers crossed the frost isn't as bad tonight as what's forecast. Otherwise, for you the customer and me as a business, there ain't going to be too many early potatoes.